this was a big debate on Twitter. Vish started the debate. Vish, God love him, said, I know I'm going to get canceled for this. I don't think Frank Gore should be in the Hall of Fame. Ben, what do you think? Should Frank Gore be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, first off, Grant, I'm just going to preface this by saying that I don't have the best history on the 49ers. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the most knowledgeable Frank Gore fan.
Okay.
But I will talk about my Hall of Fame criteria a little bit, and then I'll talk about why I think he may or may not get in. Well, first of all, I think he's getting in, actually. Let me get that out of the way. I think Frank Gore is absolutely going to be a Hall of Famer. I've absolutely no doubt about that because of the career statistics he's put up. But to me, a Hall of Famer is a player who is a top 5 elite player at their position, one of the best for an extended period of time with absolutely no doubt or reservation. And I just don't know how I feel about Frank Gore when it comes to that. I think he has the career statistics that you would want in terms of yards, of course. But then when you look at some of the other statistics, Grant, he's just not quite in the Hall of Fame range as maybe some other players. His yards per attempt, he's outside the top 100 players, I believe, in NFL history, about 4.3 yards per attempt. I might be a little off on that, but I think my overall point is that when I look at a player like Eli Manning, for example, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer in my mind because he is not an elite quarterback. He was never one of those top quarterbacks who is the ultimate difference maker. Now, he won a Super Bowl with this team and he had 2 excellent playoff runs. But to me, you have to be that top tier elite talent, elite player. And I just don't think Frank Gore was quite that guy in comparison to the rest of the guys who were playing with him at the time. And I think there were a lot of great backs. And if you are going to make the argument for Frank Gore using my argument against me, you can say, look how many great backs there were at the time. Look how many great running backs. I mean, there were in the early 2000s. Like the top of that list is extremely good. And I just don't think Frank Gore is quite there. So that's where I'm at, Grant. But I'll also just say this.
No, Vish agrees with
I
you.
could be
Eric
totally
Crocker
wrong.
agrees with you. Eric Crocker also thinks he's not a Hall of Famer. I do think he's a Hall of Famer, so let me try to lay out the argument. The way I see it is he was never all pro. That's a weird quirk. Third all-time leading rusher was never all pro. There were a lot of great running backs in his era. I think he probably should have been all pro. Like in 2006, he ran for like 1,600 yards. Larry Johnson was
Grant,
all pro.
He was actually all pro second team.
He was second team a couple of times. Right. He was really good. And he was on teams with no offensive innovation, where everything was about hand off to Frank Gore and let him run into 8-man boxes for a long time, like basically for his prime. And then Harbaugh got there right at the end of his 20s, and really Frank Gore took off. But he was at his best back when I was in college. And again, like there was nothing going on those teams. So I think his numbers could have been even better. But the reason I say he's a Hall of Famer is like, I hear what you're saying. And that's exactly what Crocker and Vish said. Like he was never really that top tier running back in the league. I think for running backs getting into the Hall of Fame, I don't think that matters. Just in terms of like, I think what matters for running backs, at least for the voters that vote, is longevity. Like it's running back. It's like, I know that passing stats have exploded. So just being top 10 passing yards doesn't necessarily mean you're a Hall of Famer, because running stats haven't exploded. I mean, it's still hard to run, and just to have a long career as a running back is incredibly impressive. So the fact that he's the 3rd all-time leading rusher in the NFL, like the top 16 guys are in the NFL, are in the Hall of Fame. The only 2 who aren't are Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, who probably are going to make it. So just based on how the voters vote, I think at that position is pretty cut and dry. If you have, I don't know what the marker is, but if you're top 16 in all-time rush, you're probably going to make it. So if I had to bet in Vegas, I would bet strongly that he's going to make it. Whether he should or not is a different discussion. I think that longevity matters in the NFL. Like, I think it's great to give someone like Terrell Davis made it in a few years ago. And like, he had like 3 years, but they were great. And he was the best runner. He was legit MVP candidate, won Super Bowls. I understand making exceptions for players like that, players like Gale Sayers, whose career was cut short because of injury. I mean, you could even argue Bo Jackson should be under the same criteria, but I think at the same time, there is a place for people who have a very long body of work. I don't think you poo-poo that. I mean, I think that's kind of the whole point. Like, you lasted in the league a long time. That's something to celebrate. I think that's something to celebrate.
Well, and I think especially at that position,
running
just
back,
look at the way the position is trending. I
Yes.
mean, the way teams act now, they won't even draft running backs in the first round. They refuse to. So I will say,
I mean, if John Riggins is a Hall of Famer, he was never an all-pro. Frank Gore is probably a Hall of Famer, I would say. I mean, Edgerrin James is a Hall of Famer. I thought Frank Gore was better for longer than Edgerrin James was, although I know Edgerrin James got to play with Peyton Manning and defenses that were tripping about the pass. I'm just saying. I know he had a lot of big years, but I thought Frank Gore was better than Edgerrin James. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, and I would say the one thing to maybe argue against Frank Gore is that when he was running, when he was getting the maximum like load in terms of carries and just workload, it was a much more running league than it is now. Than it was like if you look at 5 years into his career, I will say he may have had an advantage in terms of that the league was more running focused, at least for the early part of his career. So you could say that benefited him. But I'm not going to argue that he will get into the Hall of Fame. He's absolutely going to get in. I don't have any doubt about that. Just based off the prerequisites like you went over, I think it's pretty obvious he's going to get in.
Yeah, it's like, to me, the running back position is very much a counting stats position. It's like baseball. Like, you got 3,000 hits, and well, good. You made it. You did it. You got 500 home runs. Dude, you made it. Like, you made it. You might have never been the number one slugger of your time or the number one hitter, but you hit it. You reached a milestone. Like Frank Gore, real quick. Frank Gore has 1,600 rushing yards. Only 3 guys in the history of the league have ever done that. Tip of the cap. Well done, Frank. That's a very – I mean, running backs, they last like 2.5 years. Saquon Barkley, he's not going to touch that. Christian McCaffrey, he's not going to touch that. Those are guys – like Christian McCaffrey was the best for a minute or was in the conversation. Right. But Frank Gore had a better career. Sorry, Christian.